Hello again fellow quilters, my name's Diane and you are very welcome to join me in my sewing room. As you can see from the thumbnail of this video, I did manage to complete a Christmas top. It wasn't my intention. My intention was just to look at all of the scraps that I have, the Christmas themed scraps of fabric that I had in my stash, put them together in random blocks and save them in a box ready for perhaps next October, where I would take them out and start putting them together for a Christmas quilt for next year. It's the 6th of December today and there isn't enough time for me to have made that quilt. But I've got to say, as I realised I was going to get a full quilt top out of it, I was that close to ordering the batting and the backing and completing it, but there's just not enough time to have done that really, and I want to be relaxed and chilled, especially at this time of year. So I do have now a quilt top that I'm going to box up, put away, ready for, like I say, probably next October when I'll get it out and complete it then. But if you'd like to see how I got on making this quilt, please continue watching. So if you've seen my last video, you'll have seen that I've just made a Christmas throw. And this is the leftover fabric that I have. And I've already processed these squares. These are 4 3/4 inch, that's 3 inch, and that's 1 3/8 wide, any length really. That's to go in my log cabin collection. I did use some 5.5 inch squares as the centre of the variable star on my last quilt, and that is the leftover fabric that I bought, a bundle of fat quarters. So today is Monday the 27th of November, so we're in the very last week now, and then December starts and all the Christmassy things. I haven't put any of my decorations up yet. Some of our neighbours, they've all decorated the outside of their houses already, but not me. I've been very good. Today though, I've had a sort of change of heart. Normally when I make a quilt, I see it through from design process, the making of it, and then I either gift it or I sell it and it's complete, it's gone. So like a lot of quilters, I have favourite ways of processing my scraps, different sizes that I tend to cut and store them in. One of the ways is to make strips like this. They're 1 3/8 wide, all different lengths, and these are great because I save them in a big box and you can just sort of flick through them. They are all ironed in there, so they don't get crinkly. I don't have to keep ironing them. So once they're processed, they're ready to use when I'm ready. But occasionally, when I've made a project, there's the mysterious block, one that sort of goes astray. Usually I pick it up with another piece of fabric and then I can't find it, so I'll make another block, and you know, inevitably when you finish the quilt you find the block, and that happened with this one. So this is the only sort of block that I've got like this in the Christmas fabric. You can see it's a variable star, and I hadn't finished putting the points on, and I don't think I've got enough of this blue fabric. I have got some navy blue fabric, but that could be a start of a block. Well, obviously it is a start of a block, but that I can save. And I've also got some squares in here and some half square triangles. So I think what I'm going to do, something completely out of my usual way of working, a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm not sure how I'll get on with unfinished projects. What I'm going to do is make up as many blocks as I can from this fabric that I have, and then store them away in a box for a future Christmas quilt. And then sometimes, especially in the January sales, there might be some Christmas fabric left over that I can add to if I can get some really good bargains. So I think I might just put together random blocks and make a sort of scrappy sampler. Got no real plan, just Christmas themed fabric. That's the only directive I've got at the moment. I think what I might do though is make it in multiples of 3 inches. so that they will fit together when I get to that point. So I'm not favouring any particular block for this. Catty Bob responded, thanks Catty Bob, and she said that she uses a lot of friendship stars. So I'm definitely going to put some friendship stars in because that's quite a nice size, isn't it? 3 by 3. So yeah, I'm going to do that. But I do intend to record each block that I make as I do it. I'm not just going to put them in a box because I know, that I won't keep on top of that. So I will record it in my squared book so I can just pull it off a shelf and have a little flick through. Okay, let's see how we get on. At the moment, this is the design for the Mystery Christmas Quilt. And if you think it looks a little bit confusing, well, you're not alone. So do I. What I've done is, as I've completed a block, I've put the outline here, but now I need to add some colour. I've only started with the gold and yellow because I wanted to make sure there was a good distribution of that throughout the quilt. So if I start adding some colour to this now, it'll make the design a little bit clearer. It'll help me with my next step and it will show you how I came to this design. So I started this quilt with this block. It was a 6 by 4 block, a variable star in the centre with a gold on point square. And so I thought I would continue that on point square into the rest of the design and carry on with the blue. So I'll show you the next part I added. So I added 4 more of the gold on point squares and I took the blue around and that then finished off the points of this white lozenge, and so that was the first step. And then I decided I wanted to break up that rectangular shape, so I added some arms coming out, and they again featured these on point squares, and the background is the same blue. And then I've just started to introduce this green because I have some of this green Christmas fabric left over from my last quilt, so I wanted to incorporate that. So those were my first blocks. So now at this point I'd made up my mind I was going to use a lot of the navy blue and the dark green, this forest green, as the background for the quilt. So I really wanted to make sure there was as much gold as I could put in. I haven't got a lot of gold left over, but I wanted to bring that around the quilt to give it some pops of brightness. And so I made some little squares within a square. So there's a gold centre and then there's a little box around it. And that was the start of my friendship stars. So I gave those some red points and I'll add those. So as you can see, I've added the red points now to these friendship stars. And then what I wanted to get away from was these sharp right angles in the quilt. And so my idea was to do half of this friendship star in the blue and the other outer half in the green, just to break that sharpness up. And that's half of the friendship star coloured in blue, and then I did the other half in the forest green. So that's a nice introduction of the green. It is a dark green background, but there's quite a lot of gold in the pattern, so that lifts it. So my next decision was to make some more variable stars, 4 of those, to match that one in the centre. And then when it came to designing this variable star block, I put the gold in the centre to bring out that on point square again, and I continued with the dark green background, but then I thought I would bring in some of these golden squares within a square again, just to lift it. In my mind, I'm thinking of them as being like Christmas lights or flickering candles, so small golden lights in the background. So I put the gold inside a green box. And then in my Christmas themed leftover scraps of fabric, I found I had some 5.5 inch squares with Christmas tree motifs in. That was from my last project, so I thought I would put those in a variable star. And there we are. I put those 4 variable stars, 1 in each corner. So they have a red background in the 5.5 inch square. So I put white or creamy points on the green background, and in one of the corners, closest to the quilt centre, there is a little on-point square, little golden on-point square. And at the moment, those are all the blocks I have made. So it's decision time now, where we go next with it. So now I think I'll lay these all out and we'll have a look at the real thing. And this is the central block that I completed, and everything else comes off that. So my next step was to bring out these arms and continue that golden on-point square. And then I added these friendship stars. So they provide a nice sort of circular movement going around the central motif. And you can see that the blue then changes into the green, and I think that works well. And now I've added these variable stars, again with that on-point golden square. You can see these little highlights of gold that I was talking about earlier, the candlelight in the background, and that brings the white out with the points on the star. So these are the stars I added with a Christmas tree in the centre. Again, they've got the creamy white scrappy points to the star, so they match those going around, and they've got these little on-point squares in the inside corner patch. I think that's looking really lovely. Now I'm going to work on some smaller squares to fill in these spaces. So there won't be a dominant block like this. There'll be small little, probably squares within squares. And I'll put some of those down there and I'll have a look and see what that looks like. It's so cold. It looks pretty. But I'm not venturing out today. So I'm stopping in and I'm going to crack on and make as many of those 3-inch squares as I can. Squares within a square, and I'll show you how I get on. And so I'm back in the warmth in the sewing room, and you can see that I'm just playing around with this design, and I'm thinking I'm going to put some friendship stars in the corners, and I'm looking now to fill the spaces with these squares within a square. And so I've prepared some of these squares in a square. So these are all 1 3/8 wide, and these are a smidge over 3 inches long, and these squares are 1 3/8 square. So I'm going to make those up, trim them down to 3 inches when they've been pressed. So there's not a huge amount of scraps left now. There's quite a lot of blue, there's some pale, there's some green. There's little bits on the floor, those are the blocks that I've completed, and there's a few odds and ends here. So there's some 4 3/4 inch squares, a tiny little bit of a leftover fat quarter, there's some half square triangles. So I'm just going to sit in here in the warm and sew, and I'll show you what I get up to today. And so suddenly this quilt has a new name, the Unexpected Wreath, because that's what's appeared, and it was very unexpected. This is all I have left now of my Christmas fabric. So there are some strips in there left, and there's a few little half square triangles and a few 4 3/4 inch squares. So if you think that you might like to use up any of your Christmas themed scraps to make a quilt like this one, I have prepared the block diagrams, and I've now labelled them with letters ready for the construction. So let's begin that. And so I'm going to begin the construction with this main block. This is block A, and it's 6 blocks across, 8 blocks down, and I'm going to build out on the right and the left. I'm going to start off with 2 of the friendship stars with the blue facing inwards, and then the on point golden square with the blue pointing out, and the on point square is block C, and the 2 friendship stars are block D. So I'll sew this strip together and add it to the centre, and then I'll do the same on the left hand side. So I've added those sides, and the next thing I'm going to do is put a panel on each side of those. And so this panel consists of block E, which is a variable star, and as you can see we've got the little gold square and squares on the outside, and then we've got a block each side of that, and that's block FA and FB, and there is a difference because they are mirrored. All of those blocks are clearly labelled on the page, so I'll put those together. So all those panels are sewn together now, and just before I finish this part I'm going to add the border. So it's 3 inches wide, and I've just put together 2 half square triangles that will meet that central point, so we'll just bring the green out a little bit. And I've also just put a row of zigzag stitches along the edge there because I'm going to be putting this top away. So that's the central panel complete with the border. So I'm going to set that aside now. And so the construction of the top and the bottom of the quilt starts off the same as the side. So we have the 1 point golden square with the blue pointing out, and then we've got the 2 friendship stars with the blue pointing in, and the variable star with FA and FB blocks on the side, and then the border. So I shall put all of those together, and that's the start of the top and the bottom. So now I want to put the right hand side of that top panel together. So what I need to do next is to join this variable star, make sure that the tree is in the right direction, and I've got a gold on point square in the bottom left, and then I have a panel here that joins to that with a red square in a square bottom left. There is a friendship star, again make sure the tree is directional, in the right direction, and we have a bottom left again with a yellow square in a square. So I shall join those two together, piece them as one block, and then join that onto there after I've put the borders around. So I've joined together the 3 strips, the top, the middle and the bottom, and they've all got a border on, and they've all been zigzag stitched around the edge just to stop it fraying. And so I'll join these together, then I'll press it, and I'll show you what the whole top looks like. And that's her finished. Isn't she beautiful? She is 56 inches wide and 61 inches deep at the moment. I will probably put another narrow border around the outside just to preserve those outside green points on those on-point squares. But I just never dreamed that I had enough fabric in my scraps to make a full quilt. All of this, apart from the navy blue, is leftover remnants and scraps of fabric from past Christmas projects. And I still have a few left, a few small pieces left. My intention there is to make some more blocks, and they will be random. There's definitely not enough now to make a full quilt. Well, I think that was definitely worth my time in the sewing room, using up all my little scraps. And I've got to say, I found working on this quite therapeutic. So if you've enjoyed watching this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to subscribe and you go to my community page, you'll find the plan for this unexpected wreath quilt and all the block requirements that you need. Of course, you could just make it any way you like, your own scrappy quilt, and see what happens. Thanks for watching. Take care, everybody. Bye.